The Atlantic hurricane season kicked off on June 1st and runs through November 30th. Next on the Cape May County Report, we'll find out what Cape May County is doing to make sure it's prepared for any emergency. That's next on the Cape May County Report. Welcome to the Cape May County Report. I'm Lenora Bonafonte, Cape May County Communications Director, along with Freeholder Director Gerald Thornton. And joining us today is Martin Pagliughi, who is the Coordinator for Emergency Management in Cape May County. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Director, June kicked off the hurricane season. It runs through November 30th. Preliminary forecasts are calling for maybe a severe storm system coming our way. After last year, how important is it that Cape May County focuses on preparedness?
Well, it's very important, and that's why throughout the year and year after year we continue to prepare, and we train our emergency personnel and with the first responders, and we continue to train with all our first responders with emergency management, so fire, police, rescue, and we have exercises 4 or 5 times a year just to be prepared in case we have a crisis in the county because of hurricanes. The biggest threat we have in Cape May County as far as weather is the hurricane.
Now, Marty, as mayor of Avalon for over 20 years, you've always been proactive when it came to emergency management. And in July of 2012, you came to the county as emergency management coordinator. And then the first emergency that you had to deal with in the county was Superstorm Sandy.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you learned coming right in with Superstorm Sandy about emergency preparedness in the county.
Well, when I started the job, I was the new guy, but then come October 29th, I learned a lot. Basically, it's the same thing we've done to prepare in Avalon for the last 20 years. We realize we live on a barrier island. We're susceptible to major northeast storms and hurricanes. That's our biggest threat. It's basically trying to do what we did for the last 20 years. I think one of the most important things that we learned was the fact that we need to get the word out to people that what a crisis this could be. And I think this past storm has proved that as far as our cousins to the north in Ocean County and Monmouth County. I know in Irene, we probably had a very high evacuation rate of the entire county and of the barrier islands. But in Hurricane Sandy, I think it was only about 50%. There were quite a few water rescues that had to be done that night at the second high tide.
Well, when you came right in, when Sandy hit the area on October 29th, you talked about emergency rescues had to take place. What did you need to do to ensure the safety of the residents during Hurricane Sandy?
The biggest thing was to communicate with the local OEM coordinators on the barrier islands. The second thing was we were trying to get resources to send in help, high-wheel vehicles, which we found out the day before the storm that the National Guard had changed their policy. They did not pre-position high-wheel vehicles in Cape May County. So we worked with a lot of the towns that had their own emergency response vehicles, high-wheel vehicles. We transferred them to the towns that were calling for help. Some of the towns had much worse flooding than the other towns. So they were the ones that we really concentrated on.
Now, although Cape May County was spared the brunt of the destruction that Sandy caused to the New Jersey coastline, Cape May County still encountered damage. Tell us about some of the damage to the communities in Cape May County.
Well, the damage in Cape May County, we estimated over $600 million worth of damage. The majority of that damage was in Ocean City, Sea Isle City, some in Avalon, but the biggest damage that we had was Ocean City and Sea Isle. I was amazed that the amount of water that came into Ocean City and to Sea Isle. Marty and I were together right after the storm, the day after the storm, and we went up to Ocean City and along Asbury Avenue there in those stores, which is pretty far inland from the bay and the ocean. They had 4 and 5 feet of water in those businesses. We also went to Sea Isle, and their entire police department and public safety building was just absolutely destroyed. Their town hall was destroyed, and Marty were there. We had to send the communications van to Sea Isle because they they didn't have any communications, and they needed emergency communications during that crisis. So that's how we responded. But Wildwood had some water. I remember during the storm, the mayor of Wildwood, Ernie Troiano, called me at the emergency management and said to me, Freeholder, you're not going to believe this, but I got 3-foot waves under the boardwalk, and you know how large that beach is. That beach has to be a quarter of a mile long, and to have that much water under the boardwalk was absolutely amazing.
Well, Marty, when you're leading up to the storm and you're monitoring for days out, what steps do you take when you're being told that this is going to be a hurricane, that it's going to hit? You know, how do you prepare for this? And then what happens?
The biggest thing is communication with the local OEMs and the towns. We start watching the storm about 7 days out. As it gets closer to 5 days, we start making preparations. We start awareness campaign as far as potential to open shelters, potential for evacuations. And I think people have realized that within the last 20 years, the accuracy of these forecasts have been pretty good. It's a lot different than it was 20 years ago. I remember Hurricane Bob in 1992. The storm had actually passed us for about an hour and a half before we were notified that it even went by. But today, the last couple of storms, they've been right on. Actually right on to the point where about 5 or 6 hours before Hurricane Sandy hit, we realized that it was making a slight turn to the north. We actually missed the worst part of the storm by about 30, 40 miles to the north. If we had been on that northwest quadrant of that storm, we would have had the same damage as Long Beach Island and up in Monmouth County and everything. We were lucky. We did have the flooding, but we didn't have the tidal surge that they had.
And when you looked and you talked about the dollars of damage that Director, you mentioned just in Cape May County, you toured the areas to the north. When you look at what could have happened, that's why we need to be prepared.
Well, the first tour we took, Marty and I and Congressman Lobiondo took a tour with the Coast Guard helicopter. And we went along the Bay Area and up along Cape May County and some of Atlantic County. But then the day after that, Freeholder Maury and I flew over Monmouth and Ocean County. And I will tell you honestly, I was shocked at the amount of damage that we witnessed. I couldn't believe how much damage and how devastating it was. And I kept saying to Will Maury, I said, how do you start and where do you start? Because it was just to see all those homes that were just pushed over, all that sand and debris and boats scattered all over. We flew over Manaloking to see that the bottom of that bridge just completely wiped out and see a brand new channel through there. A 3-story house that floated into the middle of the bay was unbelievable. I will tell you, I emphasize this every meeting that I'm in, and I tell everybody in Cape May County, if we ask you to evacuate, please evacuate, because sooner or later that type of storm is going to hit Cape May County.
And I guess, Marty, one of the greatest lessons to learn is to be prepared and to heed the warnings, because it's happened once. It can happen again. I mean, these type of storms are happening in New Jersey.
That's correct. Every storm is different. That's the biggest point that people don't realize. They think hurricane's a hurricane. You had 2 different scenarios with Hurricane Irene. One hit with heavy rain and heavy wind. The other one hit and also hit at low tide. You had this storm that hit right at the high tide, didn't have the wind damage. If you ever got the 2 together, it would be a major catastrophe. But I think the biggest thing that people have to realize is, like I said, every storm is different. We can watch the forecasts. We don't really pay attention to some of the local news media. We do pay attention to National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service. We are tied in with both of those facilities, so we're looking at the information live, the same that they're looking at. So we have a little bit more insight than watching a television show from Philadelphia, let's say, giving forecasts. But when we ask people to leave the barrier islands, there's a reason we're doing that.
And when you're monitoring, you're working with the state police, you're working with NOAA, everybody's input is in there before a decision is made.
Yeah, that's correct. We instituted what they call the ESF system, which was a federal program put in about 3 or 4 years ago, we adopted it in Cape May County, and actually we kind of refined it about a month before the storm. The ESF system is the emergency support function, where every department within the county and every other agency within the county is all part of the emergency management system, and we've utilized some of those people in the past storm. We looked at the fact that Cape May County has over 900 employees, all different divisions. They can come to the emergency management, which we do usually take a department head, and they will be stationed in our EOC, transportation, engineering, sheltering, medical needs, right down the line. So we put that plan together about a month before the storm, and it worked out fairly well. We learned a lot. We probably will change a few things around the next time.
So through each event, because there were a number of events, if you go back the past couple years, in 2010, the major snowstorms that hit our area, and then in 2011, Hurricane Irene in the height of our tourism season, which forced evacuation, and then Sandy. And as you said, storms are all different, but from each one of them, you learn a little more. From Hurricane Irene evacuating the county in the height of the tourism season, what did you learn, Director?
Well, during the height of the season there, it was a week before Labor Day, and we evacuated more than 700,000 people, in the tourists and county residents out of the county of Cape May. And I will tell you honestly, and Marty and I have discussed this several times, I didn't believe that we could get 700,000 plus people out of the county of Cape May in a little over 24 hours, less than 36 hours. It was just absolutely amazing, and I was really surprised. But I think those things that we learn, just one small example of the things we learned during this crisis situation. We had people that we had in the shelters, then suddenly we had the issue of feeding these people in the shelters and getting meals to them. So a resource that we had was our long-term care facility, our nursing home. So I went over to the food service manager in the nursing home, and I said to him, John, we're going to have to feed these people in the shelters. And he said, Director, you tell me what you want, I can put out 2,500 meals a day. Now, I thought that was significant, and there was a reaction that, quite honestly, we hadn't considered previously. So there's another resource that we learned during that storm.
Well, I guess if you look at lessons learned from Sandy, I guess one of the things that came to the forefront was the need for sheltering in the county. And in the past, we've always talked about sheltering out of the county, but there was a need for sheltering. Tell us about the sheltering situation and some of the problems that occurred, like Director referred to.
Actually, that was another thing that we talked about before the storm, that there was really no need, under certain storm conditions, there's no need to evacuate the whole county. And as you know, Cape May County never had shelters in the past. We started talking with some of the schools, some of the local CERT teams in the higher parts of the county. We had 2 schools as shelters in Upper Township, the Woodbine Developmental Center, and a school in Middle Township, and another school in Lower Township. I think at the height of the storm, we had about 700 people in shelters, but it was the first time Cape May County ever did it. We have to remember that we have to be able to be on our own for at least 72 hours. Mm-hmm. The Red Cross and the Salvation Army cannot respond that fast. They're going to get into the long-term sheltering after the storm is gone. But we have to be able to sustain ourselves for about 72 hours. And that's going to be for medical needs in the shelters. That's going to be for food supplies. That's going to try to be where we're making the people as comfortable as possible and survive if they have to stay in that shelter for a period of time.
And that came up during this incident where you said where you needed to prepare for food, where the Red Cross wasn't equipped to come in yet to supply the shelters. So Crest Haven stepped in with that. You also had the need for medical shelters for people who needed sheltering. And also the nursing home stepped in with that as well.
Yes, they did. And in fact, in Upper Township, they had 14 elderly that were, had to meet their medical needs, and the nursing staff that was there, Medical Reserve Corps, just didn't feel that it was adequate for them to be in that situation. So what we did, we took those 14 people and moved them to Crest Haven and cared for them in Crest Haven. So there was another example of what you learn in the process here, and we have to protect our residents, that's all.
One of the other issues in a storm and sheltering is sheltering for pets. We're going to talk about that when we come back, and more about recovery and opening up in Cape May County. So stay with us.
How far would you go to feel young again? How far to capture the sun? To walk in the wild? To celebrate new traditions? How far would you go to just slow things down? Your journey begins at njsouthernshore.com, New Jersey's Southern Shore region.
How far would you go to build a kingdom? How far to save a species? To shoot the rapids? To bolt at the speed of lightning? How far would you go to live in another century? To share new discoveries? To make the summer last forever? Your journey begins at njsouthernshore.com, New Jersey's Southern Shore region.
Welcome back to the Cape May County Report. I'm Lenora Bonafonte, Cape May County Communications Director, along with Freeholder Director Gerald Thornton. And with us today is Emergency Management Coordinator for Cape May County, Marty Pagliughi. We've been talking about the effects of Superstorm Sandy in Cape May County and the lessons learned. And one of the big lessons, Marty, that came from this was the need for sheltering and Cape May County being prepared to stand on its own for 72 hours. Tell us about what steps you've taken since Sandy now for sheltering in the county. And one of the biggest things is the concern for pets during the storm and shelters.
Well, we're pursuing other memos of understanding with some of the local school boards in the northern part of the county. We're actually looking out of the county also, because like I said, every storm is different depending on the situation, how many people we would have to move out of the county. We're looking at some of the shelters that could be possibly in Cumberland County, but mostly in the northern part of Cape May County, like we did in the previous storm. We're also looking at, and about a month before the storm, we took delivery of 2 pet evacuation trailers for the county. As you know, Avalon built one about a year and a half ago. We learned our lesson during the blizzard 4 years ago, the fact that people would not leave their house unless they could take their pet. Red Cross shelters will not take pets because of the liability situation. We built our own pet evacuation trailer, and in the past storm, we had both of the county trailers full. We put out on the website, and we put out information to the county, the coordinators for each municipality, where there were pet-friendly shelters. I think Avalon's trailer ended up with about 65 animals in it, and the 2 county shelter trailers were full. So it helped a lot.
There was sheltering.
One was
for
at the
pets.
county airport, one was at a school in Upper Township.
So when it comes to sheltering, you need to have contingency plans based on a variety of different situations. In Superstorm Sandy, just the barrier islands were evacuated. In other storms, in Hurricane Irene or different places where you have the entire county evacuating, then you need to have a different plan.
You have to make contingency plans. Every storm is different. You never know when you're going to have to move people out of the major portions, population portions of the county. I think one of the key issues that we found and we learned was in Irene that the Barrier Island OEM coordinators got together and they made a mandatory evacuation the day before.
Right.
It was mandatory for residents. All non-residents, renters, visitors, they were ordered to leave the day before. That relieved the traffic problems getting out of the county immensely. The next day was residents were told this is a mandatory evacuation. So in the height of the season, I think we've got a pretty good handle on how to move traffic and the major arteries to get them out of here. The one thing people have to remember, once that storm starts and the surge comes in, there were portions of the Garden State Parkway that went underwater in Hurricane Sandy. They're not going to move. The causeways going into the islands were impossible to move. So if they decide to stay, they're going to be there for the duration, and they better hope that there's not a fire on their block. I know up in Long Beach Island North, there were a couple of structure fires that started. One in particular, there was 109 houses burned because they couldn't get to them. That's the dangerous part. Gas leaks are another hazard. When the water comes up, there's certain situations where gas meters will start to leak into crawl spaces, into houses. They can start fires. It may not be your house that catches on fire. It could be a house a couple doors down, but with a 70, 80 mile an hour wind, it's not going to take long for it to take the whole block out.
Well, during Sandy, there were parts of roadways in the state of New Jersey that had never flooded, that flooded during this storm. So as you said, you know, you need to be prepared. And Director, when you talk about evacuating Cape May County, and for years it's been talked about the evacuation routes out of Cape May County and how we're going to evacuate them. Looking at the roadways, what do you have to deal with?
Cape May County is the 6th most difficult evacuation place in the nation today. And that's why we plan so much about with the Garden State Parkway and making sure. And another thing people don't realize is that when the wind reaches greater than 39 miles an hour, the state police and those people that are on the highways get pulled off the highways because that wind then endangers them. So you'll see the first responders now are pulling out and going to a safer area. But I will tell you, if you would recognize the damage to the roads and homes and everything in those northern counties, and I can tell you I've been dealing with the mayors of those towns, it is unbelievably devastating. That's the only way I can explain it.
Well, even when you look in Cape May County and the damage to the roadways here, and Cape May County has worked very hard to rebuild and clean up the sand and the debris so that we are open and ready now as summer season is upon us. But even in the Barrel of Avalon, I guess, where the evidence of the strong storm surge was there, with Ocean Drive being totally ripped up, leading up to the Townsend's Inlet Bridge, causing that to be closed.
That's a very vulnerable area to begin with. It's right along the coast. It goes across that inlet, and it's actually facing the northeast. So it was the first to be inundated and actually tore that road up. We had the highest storm surge that we have ever had on record in Cape May County. I know the Halloween storm, they were predicting a 9.4. I think we had close to 10.5 this time.
Now, Director, you mentioned talking with other mayors and learning what's going on in other communities that were hit much harder than we were. You were appointed to the President's Task Force Advisory Group. Tell us about that task force and what it's doing, looking at rebuilding after Sandy.
Well, the task force has been meeting. We met with the Secretary of HUD, Sean Donovan, in New York, and then again we met a month or so later in Newark. We have another meeting next Thursday in Washington. And what we're doing, we're coordinating our efforts between New York, New Jersey, and in fact Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland. We all meet together. And it's interesting because we all are experiencing the very same problems. We have the very same problems about what do we do about mitigation for future storms? What do we do about protecting our residents? What do we do about flood elevation levels and those type of things? And that's all under discussion. And you know, it was so important to see the President come in and with the governor, and the governor invited him and the president responded. So the governor and the president working so well together, I can tell you is very positive. Having the governor and the president together and letting everyone know that the shore is open and we are open for business. You know, we have a $40 billion tourist industry here in New Jersey we have to protect. Cape May County alone has $5.1 billion of business that we have to protect. So the effort that was made by the governor's office and the state and the president was very significant for us. It was well done. It was really well done.
And the emphasis to show how all of the shore communities and working together to rebuild, to be open. When you talked about that, the federal government showed the importance of tourism in the state of New Jersey, throwing in $25 million for the state of New Jersey to start their campaign that says Cape May County and New Jersey is ready and open for business.
And I have to give credit where it's due. The lieutenant governor and the governor met with all the business community, met with the tourism officials, and made that effort to get that $25 million. County of Cape May, we started in 2 weeks after the storm, saying we are going to be open for the season, and we continue to advertise that. Sea Isle City, Mayor Desiderio had a billboard right outside of New York as you come out of New York that said Sea Isle City is open. So everybody's made an effort, and we've done very well. Last weekend was an indicator of just how well we've been doing here in the county of Cape May.
Because it's not only important, for our economy, with tourism being our #1 economy, but also being sensitive to the devastation in North Jersey, but letting people know that the coast is open, the shore is open, and that we're here in New Jersey and ready for everyone.
And we want to keep that business in New Jersey. That's why it's so extremely important. And I'm saddened to think that those other counties, Ocean and Monmouth County, and I know those officials up there and the difficulty they're having. And I only wish them, Godspeed and recover quickly, because they have a nightmare. I just was standing with some of the mayors with the President Obama situation in Asbury Park, and I can tell you they're making a sincere effort. It's well done, and I will say from the federal level, the state level, and the county and municipal levels, everybody's really working together here.
And as you saw in Cape May County, as every community worked together to rebuild and make sure that Cape May County is ready and open and stronger than before. When you look at some of the problems that you had to deal with, after Sandy, that were unique, housing problems, where we actually house people from other areas of the state, food, supplies, making sure we have equipment for the future. You're even looking at different avenues for that to make sure Cape May County could stand alone.
Yeah, that's it. We're looking at different sources for food distribution. We're looking at different sources for gasoline distribution, which was a big issue in North Jersey after Irene. We've been talking with some of the fuel oil distributorships to be able to bring in tank trucks, pre-position them if we have to. These are all things that we've learned through the past couple of storms. The other thing I think it's imperative that a lot of the municipalities have to pay attention to what we give the orders to evacuate and what the tidal surges are going to be. One of the other issues is they have to realize they have to move some of their emergency equipment off the islands if we tell them to evacuate. We sent in a fire task force, I think 10 or 14 engines up to North Jersey, because firehouses that were on the barrier islands up there had been completely washed out and they lost all of their apparatus. These are things that you have to plan for ahead of time.
And one of the areas when you talked about fuel down at the county airport, now getting a fuel distributor there is...
That was critical, and now we have fuel at the county airport, which during an emergency is a major resource for us. So we're not only supporting commercial, or general aviation at the county airport, but also if we have a crisis, the airport is a resource that we can need as far as getting material and supplies and personnel into the county of Cape May.
We only have a few minutes left. I know there's so many other things to talk about. You have Red Cross training taking place for sheltering in Cape May County, revamping the emergency website for the people. What can individuals do to be prepared? And there's different ways they can volunteer through CERT teams. And tell us how they can help.
It's important to realize that if Cape May County is going to have shelters, the towns have to step up to the plate. They have to provide some volunteers. They have to provide their CERT team members to help with the shelters. We can't man all of the shelters. You just don't take a bunch of people and put them in a gymnasium. We need support by the towns that don't have CERT teams. We're offering Red Cross training classes for civilians to come in, be trained in general shelter operations. There's just a lot of things that come into the planning if we're going to have shelters. And when we ask the people to leave, we mean it.
Thank you for joining us. There's so much more we could talk about. To find out about preparedness in Cape May County, visit capemaycountygov.net. Until next time, I'm Lenora Bonafonte. See you on the Cape May County Report.